Greetings, cut flower growers, flower farmers, and greenhouse professionals interested in learning about crops you just might want to add to your product mix in the near future. I'm your host, Bill Calkins, and this tutorial continues a collection of videos and podcasts intended to help you select and produce amazing new cut flowers. The trend in cut flowers cannot be ignored, and so many growers are adding them to assortments, and offering production information now is as important as ever. And Joan, after talking to you, it sounds like there's a lot of people looking for this information, so we are very happy to provide it. I'm pleased to be joined once again by two guests with years of cut flower experience, as well as production knowledge and market intel. Joan Mazat is cut flower business manager at Ball Seed Company, and Bob Croft is a product technical manager with Sakata Seed America, and they both have plenty to share when it comes to selecting and growing cuts. Our topic this time is anemone, and specifically the F1 Gemstone series. Opportunities to boost holiday sales with unique products is always appealing, and the potential profitability of anemone gemstone cannot be overstated. I know Bob will add much more detail about why gemstone is an ideal series to add, and Joan has ideas for exactly how to position this crop. So why don't we start there? Joan, why are you excited to have gemstone in the Ball cut flower portfolio? And then Bob, why don't you go ahead and take it from there and help the viewers and listeners put together a production plan for this beautiful series?
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Bill, and thank you, Bob. What excites me about gemstone is that, you think about growing the cut flower crops and obtaining corms, treating corms, obtaining corms, again, is difficult. And, freight is a concern, sourcing is a concern, etc., so on. And so when you can hear that you can have this top quality anemone done from a seed from, your favorite plug producer, this immediately just perked my interest. And it was like, this is unique. It's unique to Sakata to me, and it just seems like it's a problem solver. And so that's why I was so excited to ask for this wonderful presentation by Bob to tell us more and really the features and benefits of working with gemstone.
Okay, thank you, Joan. Yes, the gemstone series is quite a beautiful line that we just introduced a few years ago. We have some very nice colors. We have a red, a white, a blue, and now we came out with chocolate and also a pink. It's kind of a very delicate flower, but beautiful, bright colors, about 4 to 5 inches across. It just screams spring to everybody when you see anemone. So it's a very beautiful flower to add to spring vases and welcome in the season. The nice thing about gemstone is that it has a longer harvest window than corms. It also gives you up to 25 flowers per plant. So we'll get into the technical part of it and show you how to explain how to grow a crop. And again, here is a nice scheduling window. We can show you that it's basically sown between weeks 30 to 40. And then you can go either in a 288 or a 128 plug tray. Depending on the size of the plug tray, it's transplanted between weeks 36 and 49. And then fast cropping, the ideal temperature is 54 to 58, so it's an ideal crop to grow cool, to save money, economize. And then you'll have flowers between weeks 1 to 24, depending on your climate. As the temperatures get warmer, it does then start to go dormant. So we will start here with the sowing. Basically, you pick your plug size. You want a good soil mix that has a good balance between air and water. You don't want it saturated like a begonia. That little bit of higher aeration helps with germination. And then you cover with a light cap of vermiculite. And we do recommend applying Captan, which is a fungicide, after sowing because it's prone to damping off and disease. And then the formulas below here. Captan's pretty well known, wettable powder. And then an option is for pre-cooling. We do pre-cool at our research station. We basically it's putting in a chamber at 45 to 50 degrees for 10 to 14 days. And basically what this does, it's kind of like a priming process, because at the cool temperature, that seed slowly imbibes and absorbs that moisture. So it kind of primes it a bit, so it all comes up real nice and uniform. So that is an option. It's not a real long time in the chamber, so it's definitely doable for the grower. And here we see germination stage 1. Here those radicals are coming out of the seed in about a week. 59 to 68 degrees didn't seem to matter. That's kind of a 10-degree range. They all seem to work well for good germination. One wants to maintain the soil moist but not saturated, because it needs that good aeration to germinate. And here we see a good tray, good germination in stage 2. You want to move it to a well-ventilated greenhouse. Increase the light to around 2,000 to 2,500 foot candles. And again, maintain that 59 to 68 degrees. And definitely avoid going above 75 in the day or 41 degrees at night, because you don't want it to go dormant, nor kind of shut down with too cold of a temperature. So that sweet spot's kind of there between the upper 50s and mid 60s. And generally, you're going to start fertilizing between 50 and 75 parts per million from a formula such as 15, 16, 17. And again, germination stage 2, we want to make sure you don't have salt problems, high EC. So here's the recommended EC below. 1 to 2 would be 0.4 to 0.8. And make sure that you water thoroughly to get some leachate through the bottom so those salts don't build up. And then germination stage 3, this is where you're going to have your leaf formation. And anemone is kind of an interesting plant, because as you can see in the bottom here, the leaves don't come between the cotyledons as do most plants. They actually come from a corm that's formed after the cotyledons develop. So the leaves and the flowers actually come from underneath the soil from that corm. And also the roots, people think they have root rot often, but the roots are naturally kind of brown in color. So don't worry if you see kind of a brownish tone to your roots. That's normal, and that they're healthy. Basically, you want to fertilize maybe 100 to 150 nitrogen. Definitely like a CalMag fertilizer would work well. And then now, once they have 4 to 6 true leaves, they're ready to go into the cut flower bed. If you use a 288 tray, probably at 4 leaves. 128 tray, 6 leaves would work well. And we found that if you apply some extra phosphorus at this stage, you'll have a good transition into the cut flower bed, because it's a corm crop, somewhat like a bulb or they like higher phosphorus because they store that in their corm.
Do you have a rate recommendation on the phosphorus, Bob?
Well, I would say maybe maybe 100 parts per million. There's that 945-15 that you can find. That's usually, it's called the kind of the high phosphorus feed at the start. But yeah, this would be a good strategy to kind of give that root a little bit of a boost. In the bed preparation, we can see here a high tunnel again. So this is a good crop to grow in high tunnels because it needs minimum heating, especially in areas where you have rainstorms and late snowstorms. A high tunnel is going to work well. But at 4 to 6 true leaves, depending on plug size, they're transplanted into the beds. These raised beds work really well. You also want to definitely use a plug popper or some kind of tool to dislodge the plugs, because they are sensitive and delicate. And you don't want to have root damage at the start. Optimum pH is 6 to 7, so it's a pretty wide range, which most growers have in most parts of the country. And again, good organic matter and good fertility works well. Also, some growers will grow outside in the open field. This really works best like in mountain areas where you have arid mountain areas in the mountain west of the U.S. Because basically heavy rainstorms are going to kind of hurt the flowers. I do recommend though some shading, because of the high light can often cause the stems to be too short. But it is an option in field production out in the open if that works well for you. And then spacing, 6 by 6 inches works pretty well. I would say up to 4 foot wide beds because you need to be able to reach in and harvest those stems. And we'll see later it's kind of an art to harvest them. You have to find the right stage, and you don't want to have a lot of back problems either. So, and then when you establish them, we recommend initially kind of keeping the bed on the dry side for the first week to kind of force those roots to go looking for the moisture and establish well. And at 60 to 65 for the first week works well to kind of get them off to a good start. The nice thing about anemone gemstone is it doesn't need netting because the flowers are not that tall. The plants don't grow that tall. And you don't have to disc bud them either, so it's nice. Temperature, the temperature range we'd recommend would be between 59 and 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Nighttime down to 50 to 55. But basically, again, we don't want to exceed 75 degrees or go below 41 because you don't want to risk dormancy with high temperatures or shutting the crop down with too cool of a temperature. Here we see a nice kind of pattern of they're kind of alternating the plants with 3 across. It works well. This is our gemstone, the red and white, which is very pretty. And then fast cropping, we have found that under a photo period of 8 to 12 hours, between 54 and 58 degrees is kind of when you're going to get the fastest production. So it's a cool season crop. We have found if you give it long days, a photo period of 16 hours, you're going to maybe gain a week earlier flowering. But the benefit of the long days and the extra light is that you're going to get that longer stem elongation. Because most florists would like a 16-inch stem. It's kind of ideal. Less length is okay for the farmers markets, but yeah, if you want that premium quality, definitely you want that long stem length. And actually, it works well to have that positive diff. The warm day and the cool night kind of helps those stems elongate.
So if you do not apply the longer photo period, what would you say an average stem length would be?
I think some growers will get at least 14, but a lot depends on how many are coming at one time. If there's too many flowers coming at one time, you're probably going to get a range of heights. But the ideal is 16 inches if you can give it those warmer days, cool nights to kind of give that positive diff. And then lighting, of course, will help too.
So it seems like it's well worth the effort to elongate the
Mhm.
photo period.
Yes, definitely. And of course, getting a good start with a good root system and good fertilities all works together to give you that quality. Watering, because you're growing the crop, usually it's in the winter to early spring when it's cool and rainy and cloudy. Anemone are very sensitive to mildews, both downy and powdery, as well as botrytis. With botrytis, I think it only takes like 8 to 12 hours of water on the foliage, at temperatures between 55 and 65 for it to develop. So obviously keeping that foliage dry is critical, which is why we would recommend drip irrigation as the first choice. If you have to overhead water, do it early in the day and use ventilation and fans to dry that foliage down. Also, don't overwater because you don't want to have root rot. You're dealing with corms, as with cyclamen, and they're sensitive to overwatering. They just hate that soggy, wet, cold soil. So, generally, the Pythium and Phytophthora are the 2 main root diseases. But if you generally use good growing practices, raised beds and don't overwater and good, well-drained soil, that should not be an issue. Fertilizer, they're not heavy feeders. Just 150 to 200 parts per million of nitrogen works well. We do recommend like every 2 weeks applying calcium nitrate because that calcium is very important for those roots and those stems to form nice cell walls and build those long stems and strong stems. Excess nitrogen will promote overgrowth of the foliage at the expense of the flowers, so you don't want to do that. And again, excess salts, keep that EC properly at the ranges right here, 1.9 to 1.3, 1 to 2. I don't know how you would do a pour through with a cut flower bed, but I listed there in case maybe some people will take a pot and fill it with soil and do a pour through. Light, yeah, light's very important. We recommend up to 5,000 foot candles. If you're out like on the West Coast, you might need to reduce that a little bit from that, especially later in the spring with the high light you have there. They have those beautiful, cool temperatures, but sometimes that light can be very intense. Gemstone is day length neutral, but it will flower faster under long days, and especially between 54 and 58 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, I would start off maybe with 30%. Basically, if you have a light meter. In fact, everyone's iPhone has a light meter. If you didn't know it, you can download an app. And so yeah, basically around midday, you want to be maybe midday you could be up to 6,000, but basically midday like 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. you want to be below 5,000 or below. So generally shade cloth comes in 30, 50, 70. But most areas of the country, people are begging for more light. So. And then here's kind of an overview of pests and diseases. Kind of your litany here of laundry list of pests, aphids. Mice and voles can be a problem because of the corms. They like to chew on those. Spider mites, thrips, and whiteflies. Pretty much basic controls. You can use biologicals, which really work well, because especially with thrips, they're becoming more and more hard to treat with insecticides. Even with aphids, you can simply just blast them off with water sometimes. But generally, if you keep the weeds, out of the greenhouse and around the greenhouse, you don't have much problem because you're growing at cool temperatures. But most of these bugs would rather be hibernating than out in the greenhouse. Diseases, again, we talked about botrytis, downy, and powdery mildew. So yeah, and keep that foliage dry and that air moving will help. TSWV is not really so much an issue with the seed as much because seed comes clean, but thrips can bring it in if you have a thrip problem. Rhizoctonia generally is only a problem at transplanting, so transplant a little bit on the high side. Which is somewhat why I like the little bit larger plug because it doesn't always get lost in the cut flower bed, especially if you overhead water afterward. That soil doesn't kind of come around the collar and bury it. But yeah, watch that at transplanting to keep those plugs a little bit on the high side, and then that soil very well drained and without excess moisture. And of course, keep your tools disinfected too. I mean, I know growers that actually have, some of the growers will actually have their employees change their clothes when they go between greenhouses, especially with Lisianthus, to keep the disease out and sterilize the tools and maybe have your feet dipped in a chlorine bath at the start when you walk in the greenhouse. Dormancy, anemone, our cool season crops, when you start getting about 79 degrees into the 80s, they're going to say, well, it's time to kind of go to sleep. So they're going to shut down and stop flowering. So basically a longer photo period, especially in conjunction with the temperature, high temperature will cause this dormancy. But long photo period alone will not, as long as it stays cool. And here we see the difference between seed versus corm production. This is equal density, equal amount of plants in the beds. We observe that over time the gemstone remains more vigorous and healthier with less issues with virus. The corms tend to cycle kind of in a much shorter, narrow flowering window. The gemstone is a longer flowering window, so you have a longer time to harvest and sell the crop. Here we see the first flowers come out. Sometimes the first flowers tend to be a little on the short side. So many growers will remove the first 1 or 2 flowers to give more energy to those plants to help them beef up a little bit more so they can then produce high quality cut flowers going forward. Some of the benefits of the gemstone seed is you don't need to soak and store your corms. probably even disinfect them. I know when you start your corms, they recommend you soak them in Captan at a much higher rate than we do for the seed drenching and the plug tray, because there is virus and diseases that are going to cling to those corms. Seed is basically cleaner with less disease and no virus. And then we find the seed-raised plants are more vigorous and they flower over a longer flowering window. That's for an extended shipping window. And then the flower size is about 4 to 5 inches, which is very nice, large flower for really nice consumer appeal. And up to 25 flower stems per plant, depending on the climate. If you have a cool climate for a longer period, you're going to have a more extended flowering window. Right, yes. The corms will kind of initially, because they start with a vegetative tissue there, they're going to maybe come in earlier, but the gemstone will catch up and perform over the long haul much better. Right, and it's a cost to ship corms if you have to purchase them, or to store them. You have to store them at certain temperatures too, to avoid having them deteriorate. Here we see harvesting stage now. Basically, you wait till the buds are fully colored. As with many cut flowers, early in the morning is great when the plants are well hydrated and it's cool. And for local sales, or really for any sales, you can generally pick when the flowers open at least once and close. But it's very hard to know when you have a huge greenhouse which ones opened yesterday. So the main thing we'll see in the next slide is that you wait until that stem starts to elongate between what we call the pedicel here, which is this little collar of foliage, and the flower. When that starts to elongate, that usually tells you they've opened at least once and are beginning to mature. So we'll see here, again, this is what we call a pedicel, this collar of foliage. And as the flowers begin to develop and open, this elongates. This distance between the pedicel and the flower begins to lengthen. And generally between 1/4 and 1/2 inch of distance is the ideal time to cut. And you want to make sure that you cut when they're ready to be cut, because if you cut them too early, they will break and not stand erect. They will just hang off, kind of bend over. So very important that your staff knows this. This one here on the left, a little bit past prime. It's been open a few days. So for the longer base life and consumer appeal, you want to pick them in their prime. And then here's another shot of showing kind of an overview of some various stems in the bed. The ones on the right here are all a little too immature. This one here on the left, you see that's fully colored. They're starting to elongate. So yeah, definitely, I think once you get to start harvesting, you're going to just recognize them right off the bat. So, and then basically post-harvest, it's not real complicated. They do like a sugar solution with some germicide. You can even buy special holding solutions made for anemones. They are ethylene sensitive, so you can treat with STS, silver thiosulfate, or the what we used to call ethyl block at 1 MCP. Now it's generically available. Another thing to note is that you don't want to put too much water in the vase, because if it's too full, the stems become mushy. So they just need enough water in the base, maybe a couple of inches. Maybe 5 centimeters of water, just to keep them hydrated, and that will extend the vase life. Also, in post-harvest, if you're storing them, they can actually be stored quite cold at 0 to 1 or 32 to 34 degrees, dry for up to a week, which gives great flexibility. You can also store them in water at 38 to 44 for a couple of days. But it's best to wrap them in paper or sleeves, because you don't want to keep them from bending, and maintain them in nice straight stems and erect position. Also, I discovered this, daffodils. Everyone loves daffodils, and they flower at the same time anemones do generally. But you never want to put a daffodil with an anemone in the same vase, because daffodils exude a kind of a slimy substance into the water, and that plugs up the stems of anemones. So keep them separate, and they'll do much better in the vase. So yeah, they're gorgeous, but kind of deadly if you're an anemone. So here's kind of an overview, which I guess I won't go through it all, but kind of a nice overview of the do's and don'ts of anemone. Pretty cool. If you can, cap-tan to prevent disease, plant transplant on time, at 54 to 58 is ideal temperature. This longer photo period is going to give you that great stem elongation. Keep the foliage dry. Um, Add some calcium to the fertilizer. Keep the foot candles around 5,000 or less. Make sure you know your harvest stage, the correct harvest stage. Treat them for ethylene, a little bit of sugar and germicide, and don't put too much water in the vase. And boy, you'll have a great crop and wonderful customer satisfaction. So yeah, appreciate your interest, and yeah, the colors are just so bright and vibrant that they're really hard to resist.
I think they look beautiful, just almost a single stem in a vase or two stems in a vase.
Hmm.
It's a super classy look. Definitely a fan of anemone. They're very, very neat. And gemstone, I think just the growing them from seed message and all the benefits that brings is super positive. So
And wouldn't you love to have this on Valentine's Day to your sweetheart? This red
yeah,
anemone. Yeah, that just
yeah,
says it all.
she would love it. She would love it. Well, Bob and Joan, thank you so much for all of this information. I know that the viewers and listeners appreciate your knowledge on the crop. I learned a new word, pedicel, that I will add to my horticultural verbiage database. And I will put links in the show notes and the video description to the ball seed cut flower page on the website, which we just learned before we started recording is picking up tons and tons of clicks. So it's going to be great to add this to the large range of videos already available on that site. And if you like this installment, be sure to subscribe to the Tech on Demand podcast on your favorite app and find dozens of Tech on Demand videos on the Ball Seed YouTube channel and tons of cut flower videos on the Ball Seed cut flower page. I'm your host, Bill Calkins, and on behalf of Bob and the awesome team at Sakata and Joan and her Ball Seed cut flower crew, take care out there.